At 55, I felt something awaken in me, something I'd tried to silence for most of my life. There's just something about black men. Maybe it's the quiet confidence they carry, the depth in their voices, the strength in their hands, hands that look like they could lift the world and still cradle a woman's face like it was made of porcelain. For years I buried that longing, tucked it neatly behind floral arrangements and Sunday morning coffee. I played my role, the loyal wife, the polite neighbor, the woman who had everything she was supposed to want. But deep down, there was always a hum, a restless burning ache that I never dared say out loud, not even to myself. Frank, my husband, is a good man. He works long hours at the bank, comes home tired, and falls asleep with the TV on. He doesn't cheat. He doesn't lie. But at night, lying next to him, I often felt more like background noise than a wife. We live in a quiet neighborhood in Sarasota, Florida. Our house sits across the street from a young couple who just had their second baby. And one rainy afternoon, as I was closing up my flower shop and staring out my window, I saw him. He wasn't their husband. He wasn't family. He was the nanny, or maybe their gardener, or both. Tall, built, his dark skin slick with rain as he watered the plants out front, hose and one-hand shirt, clinging to his back like silk. Every muscle moved with purpose. And right then, in the middle of a Florida thunderstorm, I felt something crack open. A part of me I thought had died came gasping back to life. And I knew. My life was about to change. If you've ever felt a fire inside you, a longing you thought you buried long ago, stay with me. Because what happened next isn't just a story. It's a reminder that the life we build can come undone in a single quiet moment. If you're ready for a story that stirs your heart and challenges your soul, like, comment, and subscribe. There's so much more to come. The next day, the rain hadn't let up. Thick clouds hung low over the neighborhood, and the air clung to my skin like a second layer. I told myself I wasn't looking for him. But there I was, standing by the window again, watering a tired potted fern that didn't need it, pretending I wasn't waiting. And there he was, Terrence, down on one knee in the yard across the street, pruning wet rose bushes like they were something sacred. The rain had eased to a fine mist, and his shirt, dark clingy, did little to hide the motion of muscle beneath. His arms moved with the kind of rhythm that wasn't rushed, deliberate, confident, strong. I stepped outside under the awning, pretending to check the mailbox. And just as I turned to go back, in his voice, called across the yard, low and smooth, "You always check the mail in the rain." I looked up, startled. He was standing there now, smiling, not too broad, not arrogant, just warm. I like the quiet after the storm, I said, brushing damp hair from my face. He chuckled. Same. That's when everything starts to bloom again. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just stood there, frozen, heart thumping too loud in my ears. Then he nodded toward my porch. "You run the flower shop down the road, don't you?" I blinked. "Yeah." "Linda's Petals. You've got the best hydrangeas in town," he said, wiping sweat or rain from his brow. "I'm Terrence. Linda." We shook hands. His palm was rough and warm, and something in his touch sent a pulse right through me. We held the handshake just a moment too long. And when our eyes met again, something passed between us. A quiet understanding. A seed. Planted. And though I didn't know it yet, that seed was already starting to bloom. After that day, I saw him everywhere. Watering the hydrangeas. Rolling out the trash bins. Tossing a ball with the kids next door. his laughter spilling across the lawn like warm syrup. And each time, my eyes found him, even when I told them not to. It was like something magnetic had lodged itself between us. He started waving, just a quick flick of his hand paired with that easy smile. Then came the short conversations, little moments stolen between deliveries at my shop and his work across the street. How's business? Hot enough for you today? Got any tips on keeping hibiscus alive? Nothing. Inappropriate. But everything felt like it might turn into something more. Once I dropped my keys on the sidewalk as I fumbled with groceries. He was there in an instant, scooping them up before I could. Our fingers brushed. That's all it was. But I swear, I felt it down to my bones. Another time I brought him lemonade. Just being neighborly, I told myself. He took the glass and our hands touched again. His fingers lingered. So did his eyes. Still, we said nothing, just smiled. But inside me, the heat had started to rise, slow and steady, curling like steam. And late at night, lying beside Frank, I'd close my eyes and feel the memory of that touch, like it was still happening. It was a Thursday. The rain had finally stopped, but the air was still thick with heat, like it hadn't made up its mind whether to release or hold it in. Frank was away at a bank conference in Tampa 3 nights, nothing unusual. I was home alone, watering the plants in the back garden, when I heard a familiar voice over the fence. Need help with that? I turned. Terrence stood there, shirt damp from the humidity, a coiled garden hose in his hand, his smile easy and soft. I laughed. Only if you're offering, I said. And that was it. That's how it began. He walked around to my gate, and I opened it without thinking. We stood there for a moment, the closeness startling the silence heavier than the humidity. Want to come in for a drink? I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. He didn't answer. He just nodded once. Inside, the house felt too quiet. I poured us lemonade, but neither of us touched the glasses. Instead, we stood in the kitchen, only a foot apart. You've been looking at me, he said finally, voice low. I've noticed. I opened my mouth to deny it, but no words came. Instead, I stepped forward. Our lips met soft at first, like we were both checking if it was real. But it was real. And then it deepened. Hands' breath movement, like something ancient had broken loose inside us. His fingers traced the curve of my back, slow and reverent. My own hands caught in the fabric of his shirt, clinging as though afraid he'd disappear. He lifted me like I weighed nothing, carried me toward the wall beside the kitchen table. I gasped, my legs wrapping around him, my breath catching as his mouth traveled from my lips to my throat. The rain outside had started again, but inside, the heat rose with every touch, every breathless sound. When it was over, we stood for a long moment, his forehead against mine, my body still trembling. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to, because something had changed. And we both knew there was no going back. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. His voice, his hands, the way he made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. I told myself it was a one-time mistake, but the truth, I couldn't wait to do it again. And I didn't have to wait long. The next afternoon, he stopped by the shop, said he was checking on the orchids. I locked the front door. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. He kissed me like he hadn't seen me in years, like he'd been starving, like I was the answer to every ache he ever had. We barely made it to the back room. His hands were on me, rough, urgent, familiar. My fingers tangled in his shirt, pulling him closer, like I couldn't get enough. And I couldn't. It happened again in the supply closet, then in the garage, once terrifyingly in my own bedroom, while Frank was on a business call in the next room. It was reckless. It was dangerous. And I didn't care. I'd never felt more alive. His mouth knew exactly where to go. His body moved like we were made to fit. He didn't just touch me. He claimed me. And I let him. Over and over. Until I stopped wondering how this would end and started wondering how I'd ever lived without it. We were tangled in each other, sweat-drenched and breathless when he said it. You know, Terrence murmured, lips brushing my ear. You don't have to stay trapped in that life. I turned to him, heart still pounding. What do you mean? He smirked. Frank doesn't see you, doesn't touch you. But he's got the house, the accounts, the comfort. I didn't answer. You deserve it all, baby, he whispered. And if you wanted, we could take it. Just like that. No plan, no pressure, just a suggestion dripping with temptation. I laughed it off, pretended I hadn't heard him. But his words followed me for days, like perfume on skin. Faint lingering, impossible to wash away. Frank spent his days managing other people's money. Spreadsheets, forecasts, balance sheets, that was his world. But at home, he was tired. So when I suggested I take over the bills to ease his load, he agreed. It made sense. I trust you more than anyone, he said. That was his first mistake. I created a second joint account, told him it was just for the shop to track expenses. He never looked twice. Too busy, too stressed, too used to me handling things. Then came the loan. I told him I'd borrowed from the shop's supplier to cover a delivery delay. He nodded, told me to just pay it back when sales picked up. Only there was no loan. That money went into a private account. I slowly rerouted more auto payments, business costs, fake refunds. Everything looked clean, legit, on paper. By the time Frank tried to reconcile the numbers, he found a six-figure discrepancy and a mortgage on the verge of default. And me? I met his eyes, gasped in shock, and whispered, how could this happen? When the foreclosure notice came, Frank broke. I watched him sit at the kitchen table, the paper crumpled in his hand, red ink, screaming, final notice. The bank's seal staring back at him, like judgment carved in stone. He looked smaller, like the weight of his own profession had crushed him, turned him into someone else, someone hollow. I ran the numbers 10 times. He whispered, voice brittle, this doesn't make sense. How did we get here? I let a single tear fall. Just enough. I reached for him, my hand trembling on cue. I don't know, I said, choking on the lie. You worked so hard. We tried so hard. He buried his face in his hands, silent, shaking, defeated. A week later, he packed a suitcase. No fight, no blame. Just the quiet ruin of a man who once believed in balance sheets and happy endings. Take care of yourself, Linda, he said, eyes fixed on the floor. And just like that, he was gone. The house, the accounts, the quiet Florida life we'd built were all mine. Terrence moved in the next morning. He walked in like he owned the place towel slung over his shoulder, smile too wide. We popped champagne that night. New bed sheets, new music, new rules. For a moment, it felt like I had finally rewritten my life. But paradise doesn't last. The late nights began. The long showers after midnight. The texts he turned away from too quickly. And little by little, the walls of the world I had stolen started to crack. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The sudden late nights. The quick silences when I walked in the room. The way Terrence turned his phone over when it buzzed. I told myself I was being paranoid, but deep down, I knew. One night, I followed him. He said he was going out for groceries. It was almost midnight. I kept my headlights off as I tailed his truck down the quiet back roads of Sarasota. He pulled into a small apartment complex, the kind where you don't ask questions. And then I saw her. Young, smooth skin, tight dress, laughter like a chime. She opened the door and threw her arms around him, and he kissed her like he'd kissed me that first night in my kitchen. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there watching. It was all so clear now. I was never special. Just another thrill. Just another step on his way up. And in that moment, the woman who had stolen a life realized hers had been stolen too. I didn't scream when I saw him with her. Didn't throw things. Didn't cry. I took notes. Watched. Waited. And then I started planning. The house was still in my name. The shop mine. The accounts mostly joint. But he never paid attention. That was his mistake. I began by moving the money slowly in pieces. Refunds from fake floral orders. Emergency expenses for vendors that didn't exist. Every penny routed back into an old personal account under my maiden name. Next, I changed the shop's access codes, passwords, door locks, set up new bank alerts, blocked his face from the security system. The final move. One morning while he was still asleep, I called the bank and froze every shared account. Then I changed the house locks, hired a mover, and packed only his things. When he came home that evening, he found his bags waiting on the porch. I stood inside behind the glass. "You lied to me," I said. "I just learned to lie better." He tried to push back curse yell, but I stayed calm. I had already won. He left with nothing. No access. No money. No power. And me, I had everything. But as I walked through the quiet halls that night, no music playing, no voices calling my name, I wondered, did I win, or did we just destroy each other in different ways? I used to think passion was enough. That if something made you feel alive again, it had to be right, no matter the cost. But here's what no one tells you. Desire can burn so hot, it leaves nothing behind. Not love, not loyalty, not even yourself. Frank wasn't perfect, but he was solid, real, honest. Terrence. He was a fire, and I mistook the heat for light. In the end, I didn't just lose them. I lost the woman I was before all of this began. Now, I sit in a house full of silence, surrounded by the things I once thought mattered. And I wonder, what's the real price of getting everything you wanted if you lose the parts of yourself that were worth loving? If you've ever been betrayed. If you've ever wondered what happens when you take control, tell me. Like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that don't always end with heroes, because sometimes survival comes at a cost.